The text lit up my phone. I thought it was sweet at first. But when I opened it, my stomach turned. "Don't worry, Dad. Once she pays off my student loans, I'll leave." He meant to send it to his father. He sent it to me instead. I just stared at the screen. My fiancé, the man who kissed me goodnight, the man who talked about a wedding next summer, the man who promised forever, had just reduced me to a paycheck. To debt relief. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone shaking in my hand. My heart pounded like it wanted out. My chest felt hollow, but my head burned. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. I had been financing his future, thinking it was our future. Rent. I covered most of it. Groceries? On my card. His last semester's tuition gap? I pulled from my savings. I believed in him. I believed in us. But to him I was just a financial strategy. A temporary solution. I couldn't move. I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, staring at the words. Words he couldn't take back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call him, demand an explanation, force the truth out of him. But I didn't. Instead, I went quiet. He came over that night like nothing happened. Sat on the couch. Asked what was for dinner. Kissed my forehead. I let him. I nodded. I smiled. My silence scared me more than his betrayal. 4 days, I carried the secret. He thought the message vanished. He didn't notice my eyes had changed. He didn't notice my hands no longer reached for his. I replayed his words every night. Once she pays off my student loans, I'll leave. That was the plan. My worth measured in dollars. My love reduced to a transaction. I realized something then. He wasn't the only one who could play quiet. The question kept circling in my head as I watched him laugh at my family's dinner table like nothing was wrong. Do you know how it feels to sit next to someone who already decided when they'll leave you? I didn't confront him that week. Or the next. Instead I watched. He had no idea I knew. He kept talking about wedding colors, about venues we could afford if I picked up a few extra shifts at the diner. He even joked with my mom about how I was the responsible one. Everyone laughed. I smiled too. But inside I was already somewhere else. I started keeping records. Every Venmo transfer. Every grocery bill. Every late-night gas station run I covered when he said his card was maxed. I printed receipts, tucked them into a folder under my bed. It felt obsessive at first, but then it felt like survival. At work, I stayed late. Not because they needed me but because I needed distance. The diner's hum, the hiss of the fryer, the clatter of plates, it grounded me. Customers tipped in small bills, and I saved every single one in a shoebox marked "Do Not Touch." Meanwhile, he kept spending. Sneakers. Concert tickets. New phone upgrades. When I asked where the money came from, he laughed and said, "It'll all balance out once I graduate. You'll see." No, I thought. You'll see. One night, I overheard him on the phone in the kitchen. He thought I was asleep. His voice was low, almost proud. "Yeah, Dad. She hasn't said a word. She's covering most of it. Just a few more months. Then I'm clear." Clear. Like I was a stain he'd scrub away. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle in my body buzzing. I could have walked in. I could have ended it right there. But I didn't. I let him finish the call. I let him crawl into bed beside me, pretending he was mine. The next morning, I tried something new. I played along. I asked about wedding invitations. I asked about honeymoon spots. His eyes lit up like a child. He didn't notice my voice was flat. He didn't notice I was memorizing every word, every detail, every timeline. My silence was no longer weakness. It was strategy. Every time he leaned on me for money, I said yes. Every time he assumed I'd cover, I did. But behind every yes, I built my own file of evidence, brick by brick. Because I knew something he didn't. When someone thinks you're blind, they never look over their shoulder. And when the truth finally lands, it lands harder than any confrontation ever could. By the 3rd week, I had enough evidence to fill a binder. Still I said nothing. I let him believe he was winning. At family dinners, he played the role of the charming fiancé. My dad always offered him a beer. My mom always asked about his classes. My brother teased him about being the lucky one, since I was footing the bills. Everyone laughed again. Everyone except me. I started noticing little things. He never reached for the check when we went out. He never offered gas money when I drove us to his campus. He always said, "We're a team," but his version of teamwork felt more like ownership. One night, I called my bank. Quietly from my car, parked outside the diner after a long shift. I asked questions about joint accounts, about timelines, about the safest way to move money without raising red flags. The woman on the line was kind. She didn't ask why. She just gave me information, and I wrote every detail down in a notebook I kept hidden in my locker. The next day, he asked if I could cover his car insurance, just this once. I said yes. Inside, I circled the date in red ink. My patience wasn't passive anymore. It was tactical. Then came the slip. A text from his friend popped up on his phone while he was in the shower. I didn't mean to look, but the preview was right there on the screen. "Man, once you're free, we're gonna live it up. Vegas first stop." Free. That word again. It followed me like smoke. I put the phone back down and sat in silence until he walked out. He kissed my shoulder, joked about the water being too cold, and grabbed his phone without hesitation. He had no idea. That weekend, my dad asked if we could host Sunday lunch at our house. My fiancé agreed before I could answer. He loved being in front of my family. It made his act easier. But my dad didn't know. He didn't know I had already decided. The house that once felt safe was about to turn into the stage where the first crack in his performance would show. Because silence doesn't stay silent forever. It collects, it hardens, and one day it speaks louder than words ever could. Sunday lunch smelled like baked chicken and cornbread. My mom set the table, humming. My dad carried out the iced tea pitcher. My fiancé sat at the head of the table, like he belonged there. He laughed too loud, complimented every dish, told stories about his plans after graduation. I watched him pour himself another glass of tea, his words slipping smoother than the drink. My family nodded along. To them he was ambitious, focused. To me, he was rehearsed. Then my dad asked the one question he wasn't ready for. "So, son, what's your plan for paying off those loans? You got a job lined up?" The air stilled. He cleared his throat, smiled, and said, "Well, once we're married, things will be easier. We'll combine incomes. It's all about teamwork, right?" My stomach twisted. He looked at me when he said it, like I'd back him up. Everyone turned to me, waiting. I forced a smile. Right. But my dad's eyes narrowed, just a fraction. He caught something. I saw it. My brother chuckled, breaking the tension. "Man, you've got it made. My sister's been working double shifts. You hit the jackpot." The room filled with laughter again, but not mine. I excused myself to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my knuckles went white. My fiancé didn't follow. He stayed, soaking in the attention. From the kitchen doorway, I listened. "I've got connections," he bragged. "Once I finish school, I'll be making good money. Just need to get through this last stretch." Connections. Promises. Empty words. He was building a future on my back, brick by brick. When dessert came, he raised his glass and toasted my family. To support, and to family that believes in us. Believes in us. My dad clinked glasses, but his gaze never left me. After everyone left, my dad lingered in the driveway with me. He leaned against his truck, arms crossed. "You good?" he asked, voice low. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah." "You don't have to lie to me," he said. That was all. He didn't press. He just looked at me like he already knew something was wrong. And in that moment, I realized my silence wasn't mine alone anymore. Someone else had started to hear it. The next week, my dad called me while I was on break at the diner. His voice was steady, but direct. "Hey, I was thinking about what he said Sunday. You sure you're not carrying too much of the load?" I froze, coffee pot in hand. "Why?" "Because I've been around long enough to know when someone's full of smoke." He paused. "And he's blowing a lot of it." I wanted to spill everything right there, but the words stuck. Instead I said, "I'm fine, Dad." He let it go, but not really. "Just keep your eyes open. Money's the fastest way to find someone's truth. That sentence stayed with me. Money's the fastest way. 2 nights later, my fiancé dropped his wallet on the counter. Receipts spilled out. I picked one up before he noticed, a sports bar tab, way higher than what he'd told me he spent. When I asked, he laughed it off. My buddy owed me. He'll pay me back. I smiled and tucked the receipt into my folder. At the diner, I started skimming pay stubs. My coworker Jenny said, "Girl, you work too much for a man who don't even tip you at lunch." I laughed it off, but her words stung. People noticed. Even strangers could see it. Meanwhile, he grew bolder. He asked if I could front him $600 for application fees. I transferred it without hesitation, then printed the receipt that night. Another brick in my wall of proof. The mask cracked again at my brother's birthday cookout. My fiancé bragged about how we were planning to buy a house soon. Between her savings and my degree, we'll be set. My dad raised an eyebrow. Her savings. I caught the shift in tone. My fiancé didn't. He just kept talking, spinning dreams on top of debt, assuming no one would check the foundation. After the party, Dad pulled me aside again. "How much are you putting into this?" I hesitated, then whispered, "Too much." That was enough. He didn't push, but his silence was louder than questions. That night, I stared at my binder, receipts, transfers, bank statements. It was no longer just evidence. It was a mirror. Proof of how far I'd let him use me. And for the first time, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt ready. Because the truth wasn't going to stay in that folder forever. By October, he was floating on air. Graduation around the corner, wedding talk buzzing, my savings draining. He walked around like a man untouchable. That's when Dad invited him over to talk about the future. My fiancé thought it was praise. He wore his best shirt, shook Dad's hand like he was sealing a business deal. I sat in the corner, quiet, watching. "So tell me," Dad said, leaning back in his chair, "what's your plan once you graduate?" My fiancé grinned. "Easy. With her steady income and my degree, we'll pay off the loans in no time. Then I'll move into management." Dad's eyes flicked to me. He didn't blink. "So you're counting on her income to clear your debts?" My fiancé laughed. "It's not like that. We're a team. She believes in me. Always has." He said it with such confidence, like it was a compliment. Like draining me dry was proof of love. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Dad folded his arms. A man should be able to carry his own weight. "My daughter's been working 2 jobs. The grin faltered, just slightly. He covered it with another joke. "Well, she's amazing. I'd be crazy not to lean on her." Dad didn't laugh. Neither did I. That night in bed, he wrapped his arm around me. "Your dad's old school. Doesn't get it. But you do, right? You're with me." I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight. He thought I was still with him. He thought silence meant loyalty. But silence was only cover. The next day, I went to the bank again. This time, I opened a new account. Transferred part of my savings, slowly, in small amounts he wouldn't notice. I rerouted my paycheck. The binder wasn't just evidence anymore. It was insurance. At the diner, Jenny asked, "Why you always look like you're carrying 2 lives at once?" I smiled. "Maybe I am." The truth was simple. He thought he owned my future. But I was already moving it piece by piece, out of his reach. The cracks in his act were spreading. My dad saw it. My coworkers saw it. Even strangers were starting to catch it. The only one still blind was him. And blindness makes a fall that much harder. It happened on a Saturday. My mom had invited both families over for dinner, hers and his. She wanted everyone to feel close before the wedding. He showed up with flowers, grinning wide, acting like the perfect fiancé. At the table, conversation flowed easy. He bragged about how we were almost ready to buy a starter home. Her savings, my degree. We're unstoppable. My dad's eyes flicked toward me. My jaw clenched, but I stayed silent. Then his father spoke. A man of few words. Heavy voice. "She's been carrying you long enough. When do you plan to carry her?" The room froze. My fiancé chuckled nervously. It's not like that. We're a team. But his dad didn't laugh. He looked right at me. That message. You never mentioned it. My fork slipped from my hand. My fiancé's face drained. He realized too late. His father turned to him. You think I didn't see the text? The one you sent me by mistake? Once she pays off my student loans, I'll leave. Gasps echoed. My mom covered her mouth. My brother muttered, No way. My fiancé stammered. Dad, it was a joke. But it wasn't. We all knew it. I sat still, my binder hidden upstairs, proof waiting like a loaded chamber. But I didn't need it now. His own father had done what I'd been preparing for. Silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then my dad spoke, voice low, steady. Get out of my house. My fiancé looked at me, desperate. You're not gonna let them. I met his eyes, finally breaking my silence. You already left me. You just didn't move out yet. His face crumpled. He tried to laugh, to spin it, but no one followed. My mom turned away. My brother shook his head. His father said nothing more. He left that night with nothing but his jacket. The flowers sat wilting on the counter. When the door closed, the house stayed quiet for a long time. No one cheered. No one celebrated. We just sat with the weight of it. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. Not free yet, but lighter. Because exposure isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the truth, landing where it belongs. After he left my parents' house, I thought he'd disappear. But men like him never vanish quietly. The next week, he showed up at my apartment, knocking hard on the door. We can fix this, he pleaded. They misunderstood. You know me better than anyone. I didn't answer. I let him stand there while I sat inside, binder open on the table. Every receipt, every transfer, every lie in black and white. Evidence of how he built his future on my back. He slipped notes under my door. Called from blocked numbers. Told mutual friends I'd overreacted. But the silence between us grew louder than any words he tried to throw. At work I felt freer. My tips went into my own account now. The shoebox of cash became my travel fund. Jenny noticed. Girl, you look like you can finally breathe. I smiled because she was right. One evening, I went to the bank and closed the account we'd once shared. The teller handed me the final balance. I walked out lighter. That money wasn't his anymore. It was never his. Weeks passed. Then came a wedding invitation in the mail. Not mine, but his cousin's. My mom asked if I wanted to go. I thought about it. In the end I went. He was there, of course. Dressed sharp. Laughing too loud. But this time, people looked at him differently. My dad's words had spread. His father's silence had spoken. He was no longer the charming fiancé. He was the man who got caught. When he saw me across the room, he froze. I didn't avoid his eyes. I didn't flinch. I simply smiled, calm, steady, and turned back to my family. Because the truth is, revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's showing up whole when they expected you broken. Sometimes it's letting them watch you build a life without them, stronger than anything you had together. Months later, I signed the lease on a small place of my own. Nothing fancy. Just mine. I filled it with my things, my money, my peace. And when I set the last box down, I whispered to myself, you paid off nothing. I paid off you. He lost the game the moment I stopped playing. That was the justice. Quiet. Final. Irreversible.